Hello and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who'd like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you.
Hi, I'm Helen Leathers, and with me today is my co-host and business partner, Tom Dillon. Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
A bit like Storm out of the X-Men. Yeah. You know, I had my mood board. We've talked about this before. On my mood board, just to ask workshop delegates what sort of mood they're in when they arrive. So Storm was always a bit stressed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just a bit...
Not stressed, are you?
Well, a little bit. Just a bit getting ready for Pete to arrive this morning, and we hadn't got any biscuits, and so I had to rush out and get those, and just, a bit edgy.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, actually, I think that's quite good, because I'd like to try something a bit different this morning.
Oh. What does that entail?
Right. Well, just go with me.
All right, then.
Before I do, for our listeners, if you're driving or operating machinery, or, operating, perhaps just come back to this episode a bit later, or use the skip button to go forward a minute or two.
You're worrying me now.
We're just gonna take a moment to arrive. We're going to talk about meditation and mindfulness today. So I just thought we'd take a moment to arrive and leave the storm and the rush behind before we get started today.
Let's do it.
Okay, so go with me on this one. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe, if you wish to, close your eyes and take a nice deep breath in and breathe out. And take another deep breath in and breathe out. And just take a moment to become aware of where you are, whether you're standing, you're sitting, perhaps your feet on the floor. And just to let go of that rush, that storm, that fluster, that busy that's gone on before, and to really arrive in this space now. And just to enter into a space of listening and being present and in the moment. So just noticing what you notice in your body. Maybe scanning your body from your head, neck, shoulders. Allowing any stress or tension to relax now as you scan down through your upper body and your arms, into your abdomen, your thighs, your calves and your feet. Really feeling that sense of connection with the earth and with this present moment in time. And taking another deep breath in and exhaling as you just bring yourself back, opening your eyes and present in this moment, ready to start our podcast. How does that feel?
Yeah, much better.
So I want to talk about this idea of using sort of meditative language and mindfulness in the coaching space. Is that something you've done before?
Have I done that meditation before, or explored it?
Meditation and mindfulness.
I've used a mindful exercise. Yes, not like that, but just getting people to focus on what they can see and hear and feel. But but you've just asked me to prepare for listening, and now you want me to talk. I'm now in a listening mode.
I can hear you.
You're going to have to do the talking.
I will. Okay, I can hear in your voice you're more relaxed. So
thank you.
You're welcome. I did a whole workshop on this in our recent online coaching for wellbeing conference, and I just thought it'd be nice to bring a taster of it to the podcast.
Excellent. So tell me, or tell our listeners about what meditation and mindfulness are.
Okay, well,
I've started talking slower now.
You have, haven't you? That's good. Often used together, synonymously, they're actually quite different things. So I'm going to start with a definition, because I like to start with a definition. The researcher, John Kabat-Zinn, in his 1994 study, defined mindfulness as the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And in another research project by Shapiro et al. In 2018, they defined meditation as a practice where an individual uses a technique such as mindfulness or focusing the mind on a particular object, thought or activity to train attention and awareness and achieve a mentally clear and emotionally calm and stable state.
Okay. Now so they brought in mindfulness within that meditation.
Yes.
To train attention awareness. So is there a suggestion that by meditating, there's some development of that skill?
Yes, definitely. So mindfulness is about being present, and you can have a mindful way of living. I'm sure you've probably seen people offer mindful eating, that kind of thing. It's about being very present and focused. Meditation, or people will often think of it as clearing their mind, emptying their mind, and it's not at all. It's about training the mind to focus on one thing at a time. And if you can train your mind to focus on one thing at a time, often the breath, or perhaps a part of the body, or in transcendental meditation called TM, it would be a chant such as Om.
Okay, yeah.
But most people would have a personal chant that they would use, and that focuses the mind and kind of stops all the other thoughts that come and go, because we can't empty our mind. We're always thinking or got distractions or thoughts coming and going. And in yoga, it's called the chitti. So it's the chattering of the mind, if you like. And I think, so what meditation does by focusing on something like a mindful practice or the breath or an object. So candles, for example, that's one thing that people will use as a focus for meditation, to stare at the candle flame. It tries to help you shut out all of those chatterings in your mind and distractions. And absolutely, that is something that can be trained. You can be trained to do, so you can become better at it.
Yeah, so my mindfulness technique that I use it when if I wake in the middle of the night and find that my mind, I'm doing the chattering thing, maybe ruminating about things, issues. So I have this kind of, it's really interesting. I have my eyes open, which seems counterintuitive if you're trying to get sleep, and I will focus on three things I can see. And I'll actually go through in my eye. I can see the curtains. I can see the gap between the curtains and the wall. I can see a shadow. So I'd actually say those things to myself. By the time I've finished those three things, my eyes now close involuntarily. I don't think they just do close. And then I do three things I can hear. So it might be traffic outside. It could be my breath, that sort of thing. And then when I've done that, I go down to three things I can feel. So it could just be my head on the pillow, that sort of thing. So I just kind of say those things, which I guess by saying them out loud, I don't say them out loud, but going through that talk in my head, it shuts out everything else.
Yes.
So that focus on feeling, hearing, but also I'm reciting something as well, which I guess is similar to the chanting, that It blocks everything else up.
Absolutely.
So I find that really useful. And so if I get through three things, then I'll go down to two things, then down to one thing. So it's sort of counting down thing as well, which is useful. So that is a form of mindfulness that I do practice when I need it. I don't do it to get to sleep. I tend to fall asleep very well, but if I want to get to sleep in the middle of the night, that's what I'll do.
Mm.
I'm very evangelical about that. I tell anyone that I'll listen. I had two ladies on a train once that was, I'll be awake at 4 reading my book. I'm always awake at 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, excuse me, got something you could try. Well, they looked at me like I was crazy, but yeah. Back to mindfulness. So, yes. Some of this sounds very similar to what we might do in the coaching room.
Yeah, so that definition of mindfulness, which was about paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, that's where we want to be as a coach, isn't it? We want to be paying full attention to the coachee. We're there on purpose. We're in that moment. We're not thinking about other things. And we want to create that non-judgmental space.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a crossover with that description and how we want to be as a coach.
I think we're still going to get the distractions of things coming into our head, and when someone's talking about things that we'll go, oh, that's interesting, and we might have ideas and questions and things. And it's about letting those go, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think not just in terms of how we work with a coachee, but mindfulness and meditation can be really useful for us as a coach to kind of get ourselves into that space, ready to start coaching.
So maybe if you have been a bit like me this morning, rushing around, arriving sort of last minute to do whatever it is, and so if that is the coaching space, maybe taking a moment. Actually, well, I had a lady that used to come to one of my co-coaching groups who would always start her coaching session by saying to me as the coachee, she would say, okay, I'm going to take a moment to come into this space. So I'm going to close my eyes and do some breathing just for 20, 30 seconds. Feel free to join me if you'd like to, but I'm just going to get myself ready for this space. And I always found it interesting. I never did it with her. I was just sat there watching it. But it's for her, that was her practice. That was the way she entered the room.
Yeah, and I think that's a lovely way to do it, to invite the coachee to join you. And I do know people who will start every coaching session with an arrival meditation almost, which is perhaps a little bit more directive, rather than inviting, let's do this together. I'm going to talk you through a meditation. And obviously, if that's something that you do in your practice and you contract for with the right client, then I think that's quite a nice way to start.
Yeah. Good. So thinking about using meditation or mindfulness in the coaching room as part of your coaching practice, what benefits might you see?
Well, we know that meditation and mindfulness can help to reduce stress and to improve sort of emotional intelligence, if you like, stability in our emotions, also self-acceptance. And there's quite a lot of work and research around that idea of self-compassion and how meditation can help to encourage that. So there's lots of benefits to meditation and mindfulness generally. But I think what we can focus on in the coaching room is how it improves self-awareness and how it expands that awareness. We talked about in the last podcast, Transpersonal Coaching, and the idea of expanding our perspective beyond ourselves, beyond the conscious part of us, often referred to as the ego. And I think this meditation is really useful for that. I think when some people get stuck, they start to, it's almost as if they have blinkers on. It's really hard to do this on a non-visual podcast, but I usually put my hands around my eyes as if they're blinkers and say, if you come into the coaching room with those blinkers.
I'll take a photo of you and put it in the show us.
What any form of meditation or mindfulness can do is to slowly open up those and remove those blinkers. So we start to see bigger picture, we start to see new perspectives. And I think that in combination with some of the tools that maybe you're using, like the Gestalt approach, which is the empty chair exercise to help improve that perspective taking, it can really help to cultivate compassion for others. So I think that's really useful. And actually, Jonathan Passmore did some research. He does quite a lot of research into coaching. And he wrote a paper called Mindfulness in Coaching, a model for coaching practice, with someone called Marianetti in 2007. And they identified 4 core benefits to using meditation and mindfulness with coachees. One is for the coach, preparing for the coaching session, but I think also that works for the coachee as well. It helps to maintain focus during the session, and it helps the coach to remain emotionally detached, which I thought was quite an interesting concept. And then about sharing the practices with the coaches for the benefits that it brings to them in their everyday life. So if someone is looking, for example, for ways to manage their stress, we might invite them to explore some meditation, whether that's information sharing in terms of this is how you can do a simple meditation, or perhaps giving them some resources to explore meditation and try it for themselves, inviting them to give it a go to help them manage that stress. So there's some ideas there. I think also if someone does arrive busy, stressed, we can help them to relax. And I've also had it happen once that someone got quite not just emotional, but agitated by a realization where they've kind of went to almost, not quite, but almost an amygdala hijack. I could see their body kind of getting quite stressed. And it looked to me like they wanted to stand up and run, actually, which is obviously fight or flight response. They put their hands on the desk in front of them and almost pushing themselves out of the chair. And it was just a realization that caused them a little bit of stress. And so I was able, because I've practiced meditation, to just use some meditative language to help calm them down and recenter themselves, trigger that parasympathetic nervous system back to more of a relaxed state, where then we could explore what had gone on for them in that situation, what had triggered them to feel stressed, and what was the realization, and what could they do with that. So there's lots of useful ways that we can use it, also to interrupt unhelpful patterns, to take a moment if thoughts are cycling or something like that. And we've mentioned before using visualization techniques, perhaps for either options or outcomes, looking at the future, maybe taking a perspective of their own situation from high above. Imagine floating high above the situation and looking down and expanding your awareness. And what do you see? What else is going on? Who's there? Who's supporting? Who's hindering? That kind of thing. We can open up sort of the unconscious mind a little bit to see what we see, and notice what we notice.
Yeah. And interestingly, this relates to the neuroscience of coaching. There's not a lot of neuroscience out there, but Richard Woyatsis has done some. Anthony Jack, I think, is his co-researcher. Done some work around the default mode network, and that's what we need to engage in order to do the more expansive thinking, the more creative thinking. And it sounds like that's where this takes us.
Yes.
It's actually in the default mode. I know, again, you say it makes us more empathetic. So yeah, it does sound like a useful space to be in, rather than in that, maybe not even the stress response, but just a very task focused.
Yes, the thinking response.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really key, because when, we are all about generating new thinking, and this is another tool that we can use to open up that thinking, explore options that perhaps might not come to us if we have our rational barriers up. And meditation, mindfulness, but certainly meditation can bring those rational barriers down and kind of create less of a barrier between the unconscious and the conscious mind. And I think also there's one other thing to consider, and I mentioned about preparing ourselves as a coach to go into the coaching space. But I think at the end of coaching or in between coaching sessions, it can be really useful to do a bit of a grounding and disconnect meditation, if you like, from the session, so that we then perhaps move on to another session and just break that connection, if you like. And I mean that in an energetic way, or an emotional way, to step away from that space and leave it there. That's that session. Yeah. Now I'm going to go and do something else.
I guess my how I bring some conclusion to the coaching is to type up some notes, which kind of, for me, brings that session to a close. That's got that out of my head. It's finished now.
Yeah. And that might be sufficient for you. For other people, they might still be in the thought process. Yeah. So they might need something, whether it's get outside and take some breaths, or do some meditation, or go for a walk, or shake the body off, something like that.
Good. So what are your top tips for coaches thinking they might like to give mindfulness or meditation a try in the coaching room?
I think, first of all, think about what you're comfortable with. So whether it's, focusing on someone's senses, like you were talking about there at the beginning, breathing, scanning the body. Is it a guided visualization? Is it talking someone through a process? And then to create a script. Now, some people don't like creating scripts, but it's a really important place to start if you haven't done meditation before. So create a bit of a script with the intention, which whatever that intention is. I want to do this script to help someone relax, arrive, end a session, or maybe create some vision for the future. And then practice saying it out loud, because it's very different on paper than it is when you say it out loud. Practice saying it out loud, refine it, practicing on a real person that's not a coachee, so a friend or family member or colleague, and make sure you contract to use that. So either recontracting with someone if you're just going to introduce it and try it, or if you think that you might introduce it into coaching sessions, contract at the beginning. So one of the things I always tell my clients is that sometimes I use a little bit of a meditation exercise throughout for various different reasons. We might not, but I always let them know right at the start that that is something that I do tend to use as part of my coaching toolbox. And they're usually quite happy with that. And just to, when we practice it, just to get used to the language, slowing down. You mentioned earlier, I'm talking more slowly. And that's one of the things that we want to do. So I'm talking quite fast now in terms of giving you some information for the podcast. If I was going to be talking you into a meditation, I will slow my pace and get a bit more lullaby and go into a nice relaxed state. So we need to practice that kind of thing. Absolutely doable online as well. You don't have to be in the same room as someone. But one of the big tips I would say about being online is if you have a client who has pets, you might want to make sure before we start this, just make sure the pets can't get in, because for some reason, I don't know if it's that they just want to check their owners are still alive, but there's nothing more distracting than being in a nice deep meditation and then a cat jumping on you or a dog landing on your lap because, they're just checking. Why has my owner gone to sleep? Or why is my owner quiet? I think that's important to make sure that they're in a safe place and they're not going to be jolted out of that nice meditative space.
Yeah, that sounds like a very good tip. And not to be pounced upon.
Yeah, for some reason, it's really weird. Cats are drawn to my voice when I work online with meditation. So quite often I see a cat staring back at me. Their owner's quite happily in a nice relaxed place. And this cat staring down the webcam at me like, ooh, what's going on here?
Very disconcerting.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed that exploration of mindfulness and meditation in the coaching room. So I hope everyone else has enjoyed that too, if they're still awake.
Yes. Bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I just wanted to introduce it as an idea, really.
Thank you very much. So next time on the podcast, we will be exploring social health as a topic that might come up in coaching.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So look forward to that. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.